Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. This session focuses on gender identity and language in Pakistan. I hope and expect by the end of this session you would have an understanding of how gender plays an important role in creating identity through language, and you would be able to understand this particularly with reference to the examples taken from the Pakistani context. Well, my dear students, sociolinguistics is a very broad field that has a broad and sustained interest in the varieties of speech that is used with reference to gender, that is associated with gender, that is used to mark gender. Sociolinguistics is secondly also interested in the social norms, not only, in terms of the linguistic norms, the social norms and the conventions that produce and that also reproduce gendered language in a particular context. And the third dimension that, broadly speaking, sociolinguistics is interested in with reference to gender is the contextuality, specific and locally situated ways in which gender is constructed and is operationalized in different societies and in different communities. Well, my dear students, when it comes to the study of gender and language in sociolinguistics, one of the major names that comes to our mind is of Robin Lakoff, 1975. Robin Lakoff's book, Language and Woman's Place, was a turning point in the history of sociolinguistics, where, gender as a variable in relation to women and their workplace was explored, and it changed the dimensions of research. It had a very long-lasting impact in terms of later on developed interest in gender and language relationship in sociolinguistics. However, after Lakoff, there are many other names, many prominent scholars who have contributed. For example, Deborah Tannen, Penelope Eckert, Janet Holmes, Mary Bachos, Khaira Hall, Deborah Cameron. So, these are all the people who, through the next years, through the coming years, they contributed towards, the explorations in the field of language and gender relationship in the sociolinguistic context. Coming back to Lakoff, Lakoff identified a woman's register, at the workplace, and pointed out that it is used to maintain women's role in the society. And what kind of a role? An inferior role in the society. So what Lakoff pointed out was that it is through their choice of language that is associated with being a woman, that through the use of this language as a tool, positioning of women in the society is done in such a way that they are placed at an inferior, pedestal or place. She argued women tend to use linguistic forms that reflect and reinforce a subordinate role. Gender is constructed and reconstructed, according to her, in the society in such a way that the language that is associated with women, that they use for themselves, that they use, for themselves in relation to the other gender as well, it is constructed in such a way that it reinforces their subordinate role. Some of the examples that I would like to share are of minimal responses. According to, Lakoff studies, women give minimal responses. To a long, argument or a question, the response that they would give would be minimal. For example, kind of or yeah or kind of, responses that are very minimalistic. As far as questions are concerned, or the use of questions is concerned, again, there is a gender disparity in the use. For men, a question is a genuine request for information, according to Lakoff. For women, it can often be a rhetorical means of engaging the other's conversational contribution or of acquiring attention. So I would simplify this for you. So, when men ask a question, according to her, it genuinely has, a genuine request for information. They are genuinely asking for something. They want to know something. When women ask a question, most of the times, according to her, the purpose is not to get information. The purpose is not to get a response to that otherwise in terms of, fulfilling that request for information. The purpose is to seek attention of men, to seek attention of the other gender, to seek their contribution in terms of their attention to this particular conversation. There are a lot of examples. Before I go on to, turn taking, I would like to give you one example of this kind of questioning processes that take place. If you think of your own families, I hope many of you would agree that you would have sometimes heard this conversation between your parents, your mother and your father, where, the mother would be, as the father would be getting ready to go to the office, the mother would ask, "Aaj kya pakaun? Biryani paka loon?" kind of stuff. So what is the purpose of these questions? The purpose is not to get information. The purpose is not to, get answer per se to these questions. The purpose is to engage, the other person in the conversation, which shows these wives at a subordinate role as compared to the husbands. Well, moving on to the next point, that is turn-taking, where it is different in women's case. Women's desire for turn-taking gives rise to complex forms of interaction in relation to the more regimented forms of turn-taking that are commonly used by men. Men have a simple, plain style of taking turn. If somebody says something and the man would say something, and again, taking turn as it comes to him. Whereas there are variations in turn-taking processes in the case of women, which show, the complex patterns of interaction. Another important example is of tag questions. And again, just to make it clear to you, I would like you to think about some Pakistani context. In fact, I would go back to that example of biryani, and I would rephrase it this time. So, for example, in the morning, you might hear your mother talking to your father, where she would say, "Aaj biryani paka leti hu, hai na?" So this hai na is a tag question. This is a tag that is attached to this, where actually the purpose is not to get an answer for yes or no, whether she should cook biryani or not, where the purpose is to get a kind of reassurance and to get a kind of reaffirmation of what she has decided. So, all these kinds of uses of language that I have given examples from the Pakistani context and then the general context, otherwise from other researchers, I hope they would enable you to understand how gender operates as a very, very important variable when it comes to the language use in any society. And, in this case, Pakistan is no exception.